Hello and welcome to Web Retailer. Today we're going to be talking about how to choose an FBA prep service. But before we dive in, let's talk about FBA prep and what it entails. Now, FBA prep is essentially the packaging and labelling of your inventory ready to send in to one of Amazon's fulfillment centres. However, it's not quite as simple as just putting all of your inventory into a box and sending it off with a courier. There are a number of intricate rules that you must meet in order for your stock to be accepted, and if you don't meet them, Amazon will reject your stock at the fulfillment centre and you'll have to pay to have it all returned. Now, some sellers decide that they want to outsource their FBA prep, and these all centre around the fact that the rules are very intricate and it is easy to get wrong. If it's your first time sending stock into FBA, then by using an FBA prep service, who are the experts, in theory there's a far less, greater chance that your stock is going to be rejected. Equally, because it is so intricate, some sellers find that they spend all their time, packaging up their orders and labelling boxes when they should be out there adding value to their businesses by sourcing new products or perhaps developing existing ones. Another consideration and another reason why sellers do decide to outsource their FBA prep is because space is an issue. It's okay to prep, say, 10 orders, but if you're trying to prep 1,000 orders from your kitchen, it's just not going to be doable. And you're going to need some temporary staff and possibly some temporary warehouse space in order to fulfill these. So by using an FBA prep service, it's actually cheaper. Okay, so now we've sort of covered what FBA prep is and why some sellers decide to outsource it. In this video, we're going to be looking at a few of the considerations that you should think about when choosing an FBA prep service. Now, we'll cover a few in this video, but if you'd like to see the full article, you can read it over at Web Retailer. We've also put a link in the description for this video. Okay, so let's talk about some of the factors to consider when choosing an FBA prep service. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is price. But in this case, really, price isn't the most important factor. Yes, you don't want to have, unmanageable prep costs, but equally, you don't want to use a cheap service that cuts corners, because otherwise you're going to end up paying for it further down the line if Amazon rejects your stock. Now, if you're a big volume seller, you're going to want an FBA prep service that has monthly charges, whereas if you're a small volume seller, you're going to want a FBA prep service that has per item charges. It's always a good idea as well to understand exactly what is included in the prices that the FBA prep service are offering. Some will charge extra for things like bubble wrap, poly bags, and putting inserts into your orders. It's also a good idea when you're talking to FBA prep services to find out whether they have a minimum that you have to send in, or whether you can send in your stock sort of on a sporadic basis as it comes in. Okay, so a second factor to consider is location. Now, if you're shipping in a lot of goods from China, for instance, it's a good idea to find out what ports the shipments come into and use an FBA prep service that is nearby, because you're going to save on trucking costs. One thing to be very careful of, though, is not to choose an FBA prep service based on proximity to Amazon's fulfillment centres, because you're not always going to use the same one. This is even the case if you're using Amazon's inventory placement service, because whilst it does mean that you're sending all of your inventory to the same fulfillment centre, the fulfillment centre that you send your stock to will change every single time. Okay, so the final factor that we're going to cover in this video is whether or not the FBA prep service has storage facilities. Now, a number of sellers are now starting not only to use FBA prep services to do their FBA prep, but also to store some of their inventory. Now, they're doing this for two reasons. One, because of Amazon's storage fees. Now, sellers who are doing sort of 1,000 units a month are basically sending in stock to FBA based on velocity. So they'll ship 10,000 units to their FBA prep service, and then they'll ship 1,000 units per month to Amazon, and then ship in more if demand requires. A second reason that sellers are choosing to do this is because of Amazon's suspension culture, and by keeping the majority of your stock at the FBA prep service, if you do happen to get suspended, it's going to mean that you've got a lot less stock tied up in Amazon's fulfillment center. If you've got all of your stock tied up in the fulfillment center, then it means you're going to have to wait to get it all back, which can take several weeks, and then you're going to have to kind of unpackage it, repackage it, relabel it, send it back to the prep service to send back into FBA. So basically they're doing it to save time and money. Now, if you think you might want to do this, make sure that when you're inquiring about price, you find out how much the storage fees are for the FBA prep services that you're considering. Well, that's all we've got time for in this video, but if you'd like to find out more about how to choose an FBA prep service, then be sure to check out the full article over at Web Retailer. I'd also like to say thanks to Danny McMillan, the host of Seller Sessions, for his help putting together this article. If you've liked this video, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and be sure to catch us here again at Web Retailer. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.